Swiss challenge is essentially any bid which comes unsolicited from a private player. So it may not be in the government shelf of projects. So if a company says that this is a particular project, a particular road project, or a particular expressway, or an airport line, or a railway modernization, and if it thinks that makes sense business terms, so it goes and tells the government, this is a project I want to execute. So the government says, okay, this is an unsolicited bid, now how to treat it? That's the next stage. Say for instance, if a company, if a private player thinks that there's a particular road project which is commercially viable, that's what it feels. So the company says that, presents a proposal with all, it's like a proper two-way contract between the government and this particular company, where it says that this is the timeline for the project, this requires this kind of investment, and it also states what all concessions it requires from the government. It talks about the viability of such a project in terms of not just economic viability, but also in terms of what it adds value to the society at large. So it makes a proper bid document and presents it to the government. The government looks at it, says whether it is good, bad, it evaluates on its own, and then perhaps it thinks that, let me just see if I can get comparative bids from other players. So it discloses to the party which had originated this idea that it is calling for comparative bids. It calls for comparative bids, several other players evince interest, and they give their own projections of what could the project be like, and then it compares it with the original project and sees whether any of them are much better in terms of price, in terms of technicalities, in terms of financials, and then decides which is the best bid. And then even before it offers this to the lowest bidder, it asks the originator of the idea whether you would want to match the bid. So if the originator of the idea says that if he has the right of refusal, if he says that no, I can match the bid, I'll match this bid, so the project is awarded to that original player. And if the original player says that I cannot, then the second best player amongst the other bidders gets a project. But there are lots of variants to this Swiss, like the original player at times can get bonus points, and still it can be a competitive bid where he gets 20% more points and others do not get that 20%, and then the bids are evaluated because that premium is given to him for the idea that he brings to the table. One is it just cuts time. The government enters into a negotiation with a private player. It thinks that this project is worthy of execution, and you don't have to necessarily go through a long channel which is otherwise available in a competitive bidding manner. So here the private player and the government sit across the table, discuss the timeline for the project, discuss the price. The price is the last bit of a negotiation. So discuss the project, arrive at mutually agreeable terms, and then the project is awarded to the private player. So this is essentially a great way to execute a project if you have the capacity to undertake or evaluate such projects, because there are huge risks involved in any public-private partnership projects. The flip side is phenomenal. The flip side is also about transparency and about charges of corruption which a rival private sector player can allege. Because most of these projects, since these are direct negotiations between the government and the private player, we really don't understand what are the terms which are being discussed. And particularly in India, where all projects are signed off by a bureaucrat, right? So bureaucrat is also not really so adept with the risks of a private infrastructure project, be it physical or social. So one is, of course, transparency. The other is competition, because when you are directly dealing with one player, we really don't know what others have to offer. Do they offer a better price? Do they offer a better term? Are they able to complete the project in a shorter duration? In the last, say, 7-8 years, we have had a couple of states experimenting with this. The first state to do that was Gujarat. As we all know that on public-private partnership itself, the jury is not really out in India. At a time like this, when we say that we'll negotiate directly with a private player on a project that he thinks is worthwhile, and then we award the project, giving concessions which could include, say commercial exploitation of land, or even say a viability gap funding. I think these are all prone to charges and legal issues, I think, by any other citizen in India. I think we need to build capacities, have a very strong legal framework before we start executing such complex or seemingly so simple methods of awarding projects.